Hello everyone, welcome to our Tuesday Live at 5. We are doing our last pieced border of the Duck Duck Goose quilt. And behind me on the wall, I've taken off a lot of the things that were on the wall. Tony's adding some borders to the pieced borders that we already had done. And up on the wall behind me is the row of blocks that actually goes on the top and the bottom of the quilt just to make it a rectangle rather than a square. And my space isn't wide enough to put, I guess I need to shift my cameras a little bit, but my space isn't wide enough to put the whole border because remember it had 4 turkey tracks blocks and 3 hen and chicks blocks. And then right above that is our last pieced border that we're doing. Now you may notice that is a row of flying geese, which we've done before. I named this row Gaggle, and I see one block that's so pale that you don't really see that there's a flying goose there because the colors are similar. So I may change that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Right, let's see. I'm trying to think where it is. It's over here. This one. The block, the unit where I have the flying goose there, that's actually an orange goose, and then the gold on the other side hides it where you don't even see that goose. So I'll probably switch that, and you may find if you're doing scrappy, you may find some of your colors that don't work as well. So I'll probably redo a couple of those pieces so I leave out that orange. I like the orange in the quilt, but it doesn't go well next to the gold. So I want you to notice that on that border, one side of it has black and one side of it has gold. And so in order to do that, you have some strategic color placement that you'll need to do. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to decide what colors you need and where you put it. Now, of course, you don't have to do the gold and black. You could choose whatever color you want, and all your geese could be the same color as well. So on your instruction sheet, that's going to give you the information for what you need to cut. But I want to kind of show you what you're going to have, because there's 4 kinds of geese that you'll need for the block. First of all, you need some black geese with colored borders. Now remember, mine is multicolored. And I can get by with my orange next to the black, but the orange next to the gold, it kind of fades away where you don't see it from a few feet away. So I have a black goose with colored wings. I have a gold goose with colored wings. And then I have a multicolored geese with gold wings and multicolored with black. So I have 4 combinations of pieces to make those. So I've already made some of them, but I'm going to demonstrate just one set just as a review. So I have a black large square and 4 multicolored small squares. I have a gold large square and 4 multicolored small squares. I have a color large square and 4 black small squares, and I have a color square. It just happens that it's also red, but a color square and 4 gold multicolored or gold squares for the wings. So that's how I came up with the pieces I needed for the block. And I'll be probably remaking any that had gold, this one. It had orange here and gold here, and I'll probably remake that so that they show up better. So I'm just going to run through this real quick just as a reminder. These blocks are 2.5 inches by 5 inches finished. So on the chart that we've used before, let me get to the wing clipper chart so you can see. Here it is. Let's put it on top. The wing clipper chart, and up at the top of the page there's a little shaded box that says start with your large square 1.5 inches larger than the width of your finished size, and your small squares 1 inch larger than the height of your finished size. And over on the top right corner of the chart, it shows the width and the height and where that falls on the chart. The rest of the information is basically the process for putting your small squares on. So this is not new, but I thought it might be helpful just to review real quick what you're going to do. Now, the first thing you're going to do, of course, is draw your lines on your small squares. And I used my magic wand. Now, this one is one of the ones that I broke in half, so I'd have a shorter one. And it is long enough to go across my squares. You put the etched line point to point, draw a line on both sides, and then you're ready to stitch. So then what you're going to do is take this to your sewing machine. Let me turn the light off real quick so that you can see a little better. So I'm going to place my small square up in the corner, and this step, remember, is what is unique to the wing clipper process. You want to leave a little bit of space out here. Usually it's just 2 or 3 threads, just enough that you can see that back square on the edge of your piecing. And I'm going to stitch on the line. And when I get about halfway across my small square, I'm going to grab my next one. Let me back out so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing. I want to place this square again, leaving just a little space here on the outside edge. And then they'll overlap here in the center. And I just stitch from one small square to the next small square. Now your instruction sheet will tell you how many sets of squares you need to do this. I'm going to grab the next one and just start it so you can see. This happens to be the one that would be a gold goose with multicolored fabric for the wings. And so if you're doing a bunch of these, it's more efficient to just assembly line style, go to the next large square. Don't forget to leave that little space. Once you do enough of these, that just becomes automatic. But I try to remind everybody when you're first starting this so you don't forget that. So I'm going to leave a little space out here when I put the second square on. And I just stitch across on the lines. When you get however many you've got stacked up to do, you're just going to turn it around. And you're going to stitch across the bottom to the other line and come back. Now the lines that I drew on my small squares, that's something you can do sitting in your recliner. You don't have to be at the machine to do that drawing, because you notice I don't draw my lines while I have my fabric layered together. I put the fabric together after I get my lines drawn. My little scissors are missing, so I'll just grab another pair. If you're like me, you have several pair, but I have my favorite, of course, and I don't know where it went. Oh, Tony said to remind you it's time to clean your machine because it's the first of the month. So get yourself in a good habit for that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is cut between the lines. I'm going to the overhead camera to do that real quick and press that so you can see what I'm doing there. Okay, so you know, technology, isn't it grand? When I opened up Facebook this morning to do my pre-setup, everything had changed. It's like, we have a new setup and you're supposed to use this now. And of course, it took me about 45 minutes longer than normal to get everything all put in because it didn't look the same. But I finally got that done. And then when I turned on my cameras this afternoon, the overhead camera did not work at all. So I had to completely re-hook it up. I don't know what was up with that. So then when I came over here just now, it wasn't lined up like it normally does. It is. That's why I had to adjust it. But, you know, that's the way it goes. So I'm going to just quickly press these, and you can easily see which one is the color with the multicolor, the gold with the multicolor goose. And I did not worry about what colors were together on that, because I want them to be kind of a random placement. If you're doing all the same color geese, I could have put a bunch of red geese with gold on one side and black on the other side, and that would work just fine. So you can strategically place your colors if you would prefer that. So now I'm ready to put the next square on. Let me back it up so you can see a little better. So this is my colored square, just happens to be red, with my gold wings. So I need another gold wing to go on there. So again, you're going to scoot away from the corner so that you have that little bit of the back color showing, just 2 or 3 threads. It helps you have enough wiggle room to trim easily on the next step. So I'm just going to slide right across that, get the next one, and I always do assembly line sewing unless I just need one goose. Occasionally you'll have a block that you don't need 4. That's the beauty of this process though, you get 4 geese out of one set of squares. So now this is the one with the colored wings. So I have a couple of different colors. It absolutely doesn't matter which color I put on these pieces, because they're going to be random and they're going to have 2 different color of the, I call these wings or sky, and say those words interchangeably, so that may confuse you, but that makes it a little bit easier to follow along. So again, don't forget to leave that little extra space on the back square showing. And when you get across however many you're assembly line sewing, we're going to turn across and we're going to stitch back the other way. And that's really all there is to the stitching part of this. I call this gaggle, this border, the gaggle border, just because it's a bunch of flying geese. It's a size we haven't done before on this project. And so it is very much, if you look carefully, it's very much like that row of geese that we called wild goose chase, where you had geese following each other. Because after you get these geese trimmed, you're going to put them in pairs. And the instructions kind of show you how to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So then you want to park your needle in your fabric tag, and you're ready to, this is how I lose my scissors. You're ready to cut these apart. Now, of course, I also put up on the top of my machine just a little needle threader and cutter, and that's also a way that you can quickly cut them apart. There are commercial products you can get that take care of that. I just stuck that up there because I thought it would be handy. Okay, there's my overhead camera. So now the next thing I'm going to do is take this to my cutting surface, and I'm going to cut between my stitching lines. And every set of 1 large square and 4 small squares is going to give you 4 flying geese. So I will end up with these 2 large squares I worked with. I'm going to end up with 8 geese. And I've actually got most of my geese for the gaggle border done. So the next thing I'm going to do is press these. Remember, you don't want to be real heavy-handed with the pressing on these bias seams, and I just kind of push it out of the way. and get the next one ready. I do a lot of finger pressing, mainly just to kind of push the seam over in the direction I want it to go when I press. And then I can just slide my iron on top of that seam and get it going the way I want it. And if you're using the acorn pressing pin, now would be the time to use it after you kind of get all the seams going the way you want them to go. You get this last one done and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It just gives a crispness to your seams that I like. So you just give it a quick little swipe. I'm going to move those out of the way and set the iron on it and give it a quick little swipe. And I'll be able to do 4 or 5 of these before I would need to probably put the iron back on the dock and heat it back up again. But just to kind of give you the idea of what I'm doing, it does not take a lot of this product, just a quick swipe, and that gives you enough to give it the crease that you will like. So once you get these done, these geese are ready to trim to size, and you'll be using the wing clipper. And I'm going to show you again, just as a review, how you trim, how you know where to trim. The wing clipper is a great tool for making sure your geese are all the precise size you want. Now on this, there's a couple of things I want you to notice. Remember I said this is a 2.5 by 5 inch goose. So that means I need to trim this to a 1/2 inch bigger. So I need to trim it to 3 inches by 5.5. One thing that I want you to remember, you're always going to put this right line on first. It's going to line up on the right seam with the goose pointing toward you. Once I get this right line in place, I can quickly tell whether I have the left line where it belongs. So you can quickly tell this is not the correct place because I have nothing to trim away here. But if I slide that down, I also have the 3 and the 5.5 here to let me know I'm on the right rectangle, the correct rectangle, I guess I should say. So this line is going on the right seam, and the line that matches best, and you can see that I have a rectangle all the way around that unit, and I can trim up the short side, across the long side, and see there's not much that I'm trimming away, but it gives me the precision I want. So I've got the 5.5 inch line and the 3 inch line going on my cut edges. That's going to leave that bold marking at the tip so that when I trim this, I don't worry about chopping off my goose's beak. So I'm going to trim across, and there's my flying goose. It has precisely the seam allowance I need at the tip. These seams go right into the corner where I need them to go, and so it works out very well. Let me do another one. If you are left-handed, you're going to turn your geese pointing to the right, and you're going to line up your goose with the long diagonal on the top seam. You're going to trim up the long side and across the short side. So I'm not left-handed. I'm not going to try that. I'm going to go back to my horizontal arrangement, trim. That just wiggled on me. That I can make that go back where it belongs. So I've got 2 of my geese trimmed, and you're going to be much happier if all your geese are the precise size you need before you start sewing. Now I could, of course, put those 2 together and make a chevron. There's all kinds of things you can do with the color placement of these. So keep that in mind when you're doing your geese. You don't have to use my color arrangement, but if you do, you'll need 4 different, for every set, you'll need a large square that's going to become this goose part, and 4 small squares that are going to become the sky part or the wing part. So you're going to be making those 4 types of geese, and then when you put them together, I want to show you how you press, because I have already stitched together mine into twosies. So in this pair, when I stitch this together, I press the direction the geese are flying. I did the same thing with this one, press the direction the geese are flying. So when I stitch these together, I want all of the golds to be on one side and all of the blacks to be on the other side. That automatically makes my seams nest. So when I flip this over to stitch it, those will nest like I want them to. This seam's going this way, this seam's going this way, and then I can stitch those together. If you feel the need to pin, by all means pin. I did not pin very much of this. Once I got that nested here where I can feel it, let's just see how we did. If you're using an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance, your seams are nested here. I didn't worry too much that I would hit that point where those seams come together. Let's just see if it worked without having to fuss with it, because sometimes that's what makes it hard to get the process we want, because we're having to fuss with everything. But the nice thing about the wing clipper, it makes all the geese the same size, and so they fit together. Let's see. Ta-da! So that's what you want. Because they were trimmed and the seams are where they belong, it lines up exactly like I want it to. So once you get that done, you're going to be putting together a whole row. One of my whole pages disappeared. I don't know how that happens. This is where you're headed. So I have my gaggle row on the outside. Let me go back to here. Put this over here. This is actually what you're going to be making. You need 36 units that have black geese on one side with gold wings on the opposite side. And you need 32 units that have a gold goose on one side and black wings on the other side. You can see how those would fit together so that they'd have both blacks on the same side and both golds on the same side. And then you have to have those 4 corner units to go in the corners, and that's on your page 2. So right above it, there's a strip right there at the top of the screen that is one of your rows, and it'll tell you on the page how many units you have to put together. And then when you put the whole thing together, this is what the top part of your quilt will look like. So there are some extra borders in there that are spacer borders, and on page 19 of your instructions it will give you amounts of how big those borders need to be. Those are what size you should cut. Now keep in mind that's your cut size, but for instance, say this border that's across the top, say you measure it, and on the paper it says it should be 75.5, and yours is 75 3/4. Do keep in mind that that's the mathematic number that you should be able to measure. You know as well as I do, sometimes those pieced borders aren't exactly what you expect them to be. So that's the purpose of those plain borders, to account for any discrepancies. So the instructions on page 19 are going to give you those plain borders and the size that you should cut. Those are not finished sizes, those are cut sizes. So this is the last border that's pieced. There is another border on the original picture. I don't know if I still have that on my paper, but I'll be adding that to your instruction sheet so you can see that last border could be a 2-inch border, a 4-inch border, a 6-inch border. It's still going to be a big quilt anyway. It's 100 and, say that again? 85 by 105. And that's with just this pieced border. And then on my paper, I have put an extra 2-inch border of black around that. So let me see that picture. I've made a couple of changes in this, but this will maybe show you. This last border, you can add another border or not, but if you stop with just the gaggle border, that measures 85 by 105. If you add that additional 3.5 inch border strip, so it finishes 3 inches, then the quilt measures 91 by 111. So you can add more, and actually remember, you could have stopped anywhere along the line. You don't have to add all the pieced borders, but that gives you an idea of what you can do to make the project the size you want. So, any questions? Okay, I didn't see any questions. Okay, look for the handouts coming to you later today, and I'll be talking next week of where we're going next. So we'll see you next week live at 5. Until then, happy sewing. Don't forget to clean your sewing machine. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.